All right, Alexander, let's talk about Biden's announcement for his national security team, the uh, the office of the president-elect, even though no such thing exists. But okay, so Biden continues to move forward as if he has been certified to be president of the United States, which has not happened. But he has picked his advisory team, his national security team, and his foreign policy team. And James Clapper calls it an A team, a national security A team. This is the same James Clapper that committed perjury multiple times, but now he's been rewarded as a CNN contributor. Either way, we have a who's who in the DC swamp. I think here we have Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, who's a swamp creature. We have Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor, swamp creature. We have Avril Haines, Director of National Intelligence, swamp creature, actually the understudy of John Brennan, so double swamp creature there. We have Alejandro Mayorkas, who has said he is going to, his first order of business will be 20 million, I believe, amnesty or citizenship for the 20 million people in the United States who are in the U.S. illegally. And you also have Linda Thomas Greenfield, U.S. Ambassador to the United States, to the United Nations. She said that multilateralism is back, which is code for globalism is back. And of course, you have the icing on the cake, which is the ultimate of swamp creatures, John Kerry, the man who was Secretary of State under Obama and spearheaded much of the Ukraine crisis, the sanctions against Russia, and Syria, and just so many bad things. He's had a position carved out for him, which is presidential envoy for climate, which seems, I mean, it's a made-up position. It just seems that it's been given to him as kind of this position, I think, to do two things. Maybe to pander to the squad and to the Bernie bros. Number one, the progressives, to just try to continue to hoodwink the progressives. And probably the other side, which we were discussing earlier today via text message, which is just probably to have Kerry there so that he can look after the administration, because obviously Biden is not capable to manage an administration should he happen to weasel his way into the Oval Office. Alexander, what do you think of his national security A-team, as Clapper calls them?
Well, I think the point you've described it very well, except, of course, that Clapper is wrong. It's not the A team. It's not even the B team. It's the C team. Apart from Kerry, who we'll come to in a moment, none of these people, by any stretch of the imagination, could be described as, well-known people who, movers and shakers in Washington or elsewhere. They're the sort of people who've been borrowing away, working in various, offices and departments of the Democratic Party, of the intelligence services, of the various, parts of the government, and gradually many of them have developed contacts and connections with Joe Biden himself, and they're now being slotted into positions in a future Biden administration. But they are all status quo people. They are people who will go back to the way things were when Barack Obama was president, but without any of the sort of energy and flair that Obama did, in a sense, bring. So, we don't have Susan Rice, we don't have Samantha Power, we don't have those kind of people. And the only one who, to my mind, could be described as, a sort of what the British call a big beast is Kerry. And look at the job Kerry's been given. He's been given a job on the National Security Council as some kind of climate czar, not a topic he's ever been, by the way, centrally focused on. I mean, he's a foreign policy expert. And I can't help but think that he's been given that post because Biden knows that he would have problems getting confirmed in the Senate if he was appointed to anything more, more important or more senior. He doesn't want him as as his own national security advisor, because that would put Kerry in a position where he would overshadow him. But he's been put on the National Security Council, given this token title, which, as you correctly say, will please the swamp. And it's all been done ultimately so that Kerry, who is, of course, a close personal friend of Biden's, as we know, their children are also friends. Kerry's son and, Biden's son, Hunter, have been involved in all kinds of things together. They are close friends, but Kerry will be there in this National Security Council to keep watch on all the things that are going on, to help his friend Joe Biden make the correct decisions, and to keep other people like, Barack Obama himself properly informed and advised of all the things that are going on. So it's like seeing Barack Obama's C team taking over. It's a most extraordinary collection of people. At a time when the United States is facing multiple challenges on multiple fronts, Joe Biden Sleepy Joe is picking a national security team of whom the most important figure, the future Secretary of State, Mr. Blinken, is best known to the public for his haircut. I mean, it's the most remarkable choice of people if you think about it in that way.
Yeah, Blinken's also known as the guy that still believes that the Iraq War was a good idea.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, and that's a fact, he still believes to this day that the Iraq War, the WMD fake Iraq War, was a good idea, which shows you exactly where his head is.
Yeah.
Of course, Sullivan was one of the people that thought arming and funding ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Syria was a good idea. And then, of course, you have Haynes, who, well, she studied under Brennan. Enough said there. God knows this trio. This is like, these three people are like, the four horsemen of death minus one. So like the three horsemen, they're of the apocalypse. It doesn't get any worse than these three. But I think looking at these three people, China now is not going to be a central focus.
Okay.
They're going to actually work with China now, and they're not going to consider China as competitor number one like Trump did. He saw them as their number one competitor. That's done. Now it's going to be full steam ahead with China and building a globalist world. But Russia and the Middle East, I think, will definitely be targeted by these three guys and girls, these two guys and this one girl, because they've got Russia and the Middle East on their brain 24/7.
I think the Middle East even more, actually. I'm going to say something, actually. I wonder whether, if you really want to pick a fight with Russia, these people are up to that either. I question whether they really are. The Middle East, certainly. And there, I think we're going to see lots of moves, particularly in Syria, which, of course, will bring us up against the Russians. Another person who I think is going to be a bit nervous, I'm guessing, is Erdogan in Turkey, because they're going to take a close look in his neighborhood. But overall, I think you're right. These are not people who are really there to look at the great strategic problems of the United States. They're not going to push for a challenge to China. They're going to be even wary, I think, of taking on things in Russia. They're going to be much more focused on doing things in the Middle East, intervening where they can, launching wars where they can, going back as far as they can to what was going on under Obama, and basically and fundamentally keeping things not as they are, but as they were. It's like taking a time machine back 4 years, but starting it not with Obama's A team, not even with Obama's B team, but with Obama's C team. A most bizarre state of affairs.
Yeah, it's like a bad sequel to a movie. But what about, because I'm trying to think back into Kerry's tenure as Secretary of State.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think Syria comes to mind. Libya comes to mind. That was more Hillary Clinton, but still, Kerry's fingerprints are there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have Ukraine, which I
Yes.
think was, for lack of a better word, you could say was one of Kerry's foreign policy masterpiece disasters,
Yeah.
along with Syria. So, I mean, I think you're going to have more of the same. Maybe not Ukraine. We've mentioned this before. Maybe the Caucasus. I'm thinking maybe Georgia. Maybe they fiddled around in Georgia in the past under Bush. So maybe Georgia. Maybe they'll take another stab. Maybe look at the conflict with Armenia, Azerbaijan, see if they could stir things up there. I mean, and what about the Baltic states? They might look at stirring up trouble on Russia's Western Front as well.
I think their big priority actually is going to try to be to mend fences with Germany and with Merkel. I think this is really where the great focus is going to be. So rather than the Baltic states, with which Merkel doesn't get on particularly well, by the way, certainly rather than Poland, with which Merkel also doesn't get on particularly well, I think what you could start to see is more US troop deployments, if you like, back to Germany, which is what Merkel wants. And once again, the restoration of that axis of Obama and Merkel, but this time with Biden and Merkel. So it'll be, I think that's where the major priority there is going to be. But you mentioned the Caucasus. We talked about Central Asia. Sorry, we've talked about the Middle East. I think Central Asia might also be an important area because Afghanistan, they're probably going to reverse the troop withdrawals from Afghanistan. And of course, Afghanistan was always seen as a launch pad for the US into Central Asia, an area which is very much within the Russian sphere of influence. And we could see them trying to sort of, involve themselves in places like Kyrgyzstan, where, there's been a political crisis recently, Tajikistan, where there's also, the government is quite fragile and it's got connections with Afghanistan. There's a lot of people from Afghanistan and Tajikistan who share the same language, and Uzbekistan, which is the big plum in this area. So we could see them, I think, trying to create trouble for Russia there. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it will get them very far, but I can certainly see that that's what they might try to do. But, they'll try to do these things, but I wonder how much energy they will have to be able to put in this. The whole feature, the whole quality of this Biden team is a complete lack of energy. And, we haven't mentioned the other person who is apparently, she hasn't yet been formally appointed, but there's talk now that they're going to bring back Yellen, who was the former Fed chair, and make her Treasury Secretary. That, again, is going back once more to Obama's times, because she was Fed chairman, when Obama was there. He basically brought her in, except she wasn't a very strong Fed chair. She didn't have anything like, the sort of force of personality that people like, Volcker and Greenspan and Bernanke, and even to some extent Jerome Powell do. So she was a fairly undistinguished Fed chair, but she got on with Obama, and it looks like she's slated to become Treasury Secretary. It's a government, if it ever happens, it's a government of yesterday trying to face the problems of tomorrow. It's a most strange thing.
Yeah, well, okay, so they're going to definitely sign up. They're going to re-sign back up to all the institutions that Trump pulled out of, for example, the Paris Climate Accord. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Iran and the JCPOA. The EU is going to be very excited to have Biden in the White House, because that means it'll embolden the EU as well. And of course, I would imagine it's going to be bad for Brexit as well, because Biden has publicly stated that he's not for Brexit. He's pretty open about it. So, you're looking at a globalist policy on all fronts.
Absolutely.
This is globalism full speed ahead.
That's exactly what it is. And of course, what you're also going to get is, as you said, climate change, re-engagement with all of those things. And of course, the one thing that we're absolutely clear about now, and you mentioned the appointments there, they're going to try and reverse all of Trump's actions on the immigration front. So we're going to see all that reversing. Also, apparently, Biden is going to sign an executive order cancelling Trump's various travel ban executive orders and doing all those sort of things. So, we're going to go back to the world, or at least they're going to try to take us back to the world as it was pre-2016. That's where it was, except, of course, as one of the great Greek philosophers said, you can't get into the same river twice. The stream has moved on. If you want me to tell you what I think looking at this group, the Chinese and even the Russians will have them for lunch. That's my own personal view.
Well, we have to mention also the Great Reset and the pandemic. Kerry the other day gave a speech at, I believe it was the World Economic Forum, big surprise, and he talked about the need for a Great Reset. That was actually his words, that a Great Reset is more important now than ever. And I think once again, with Biden in the White House, if he gets in, I'll preface it and say, if he gets in and he puts this team forward, then you're going to also be looking at a United States that is more keen to move along the same lines as the World Economic Forum, as the United Nations, in lockstep with these international organizations. And of course, that means that they will look to usher in this, fourth industrial revolution idea that is being implemented slowly, an idea coming out of the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab and all that, which we've detailed in a video before. But you are going to see this group of people working in lockstep with all these international globalist organizations. And Kerry said as much.
Oh, absolutely. No question. I mean, this isn't a government just made in Washington. It's a government made in Davos as well. Davos being the place, of course, where the World Economic Forum is based. Those people will be absolutely thrilled at the format of this government. And you're absolutely right. It's an elitist government. It's a globalist government. It's a government of insiders. It's in some ways, and I'm going to say it looks to me like an American version of the European Commission. I mean, it's the same sort of people that you see in Brussels are now appearing in Washington. Of course, the US has been run and operates historically in a different way from the way the European Union does. But this is now the sort of system that is reproducing itself in Washington. And what we've seen, and you're absolutely right when you say they're going to be completely hostile to Brexit, because of course it's contrary to everything that they stand for, and they're going to be for the Great Reset, the fourth industrial revolution. They're going to try and push us all into electric cars and do all those things that we were hearing about, and which have been talked about in all sorts of places and all that. Of course they're going to do all of that, but at a time when more and more people are showing how angry and dissatisfied and how unwelcome that is. Again, it seems to me this is a recipe for more trouble down the line. And it's becoming a government ever more disconnected with the electoral base of the United States. I can very easily see a very, very strong backlash to this type of government and to this style of politics emerging within the next 4 years. I mean, they already failed to sweep the board in this election. And I can't see these people being able to change what now looks to me like a very strong historical trend away from them and away from what they represent. It's as if someone in Davos and in Washington seeing, the strength of the Trump movement, seeing the strength of Brexit, seeing the problems in Hungary and Poland, and seeing the ferment in Italy and all that, has decided to triple down and bring, as I said, Brussels to Washington.
Well, that's exactly what they did. It's exactly what they did, and that's why we got all these election irregularities.
Yeah.
Say that word again, irregularities. Yeah. That's why what happened on November 3rd, so they can triple down. Well, look, we'll follow it, and I'll always preface it and say that Trump is still fighting, and I think he's still got some time, and we still have a ways to go before Joe Biden can start to move his stuff into the White House.
Yes.
And until then, we'll be following this story, and I'm not sure if Biden will be reporting from the Oval Office or if he'll be reporting from some basement in the White House, much like he did during the campaign. If he'll hunker down in a basement.
Absolutely. I mean, I have to say, his press appearances still are frankly embarrassing. I mean, they're almost ritualistic. They don't ask him questions and he doesn't answer them. He doesn't come across as the chief executive and the commander in chief at all at this moment. But as I said, what he's surrounded by, as I said, a group of Davos, Washington, deep state, swamp plans. I mean, that's what it looks like to me.
The whole thing, I mean, watching that that presser, that introduction of these people, the whole thing was just so dark. I mean, everyone was, okay, they're all with their masks and they all entered the stage and they all, stood in a certain place. The whole thing was just so sterile and dark and just full of zero emotion or feeling or anything. And the speeches they gave were just typical, your typical lines that you would give. There was nothing there. The whole thing was just scripted and just absolutely dark. Absolutely dark.
It was. If you dialed back to Moscow circa 1979, I mean, and you saw, Brezhnev addressing people then, it's exactly like that. It was just, again, very ritualistic, very lacking in any human empathy or human energy, everything incredibly scripted, choreographed, partly to disguise the weakness and infirmity of the leader, surrounded by all these people who, as I said, are just apparatchiks, as the Russians called them, people of the apparatus. In other words, organization people who are not really very distinguishable from each other, but who can be relied upon to follow the same view. And that's what it looked like. And that's what's happening now, it seems to me, to the United States, except, of course, that the United States is different. It's a completely different kind of society. And I don't think this thing is going to stick in the end. But, lots to see.
Lots to see and lots still going on. All right, I'll